Hollyoaks is in 6th place in my soap opera rankings for August 2022. And let's be clear why. There's a big reason why Hollyoaks went up one spot from July to August, and that's because there's now less soap operas in my rankings now that Neighbors is off the air. That's quite literally the only reason Hollyoaks is up a better start. However, I will say the reason it is above the soaps lower than in the rankings is because Hollyoaks is at least not that boring, at least not as boring as some of these shows below it are, like Emmerdale and Days of Our Lives, and especially The Young and The Restless, General Hospital. All of those 4 soaps are just very boring, so Hollyoaks is at least not boring. But as I've been saying all year about Lucy Allan's little show here, is that she has it being quite the mess. And I think I've talked about this once before, how it feels like she wants to give every character a bit like a story, because every character does kind of have a story, but they're really going for quantity over quality with the writing, and everything kind of just comes out looking a mess. At least that's what I'm getting from basically all of the stories in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to talk about a lot of them today. I'm going to start with James's return. Good to see at least James is alive, which I think we all knew anyway, but the show has had a lot of exits as of late, and they've been making the wrong characters exit. However, with James coming back, I'm starting to wonder, would it just be better off if he exited the show, because they don't know what to do with James other than make him more and more of a mess, which I'm kind of tired of watching. I would love to see James get his shit together and be an actual a smart menace like he should be. But instead, he's kind of just became like a goon for Norma at this point. Norma, the villain they've been really pushing heavily. They called her the Undertaker like she's from the WWE. We had Sienna try and kill Warren, but it didn't take. And Warren fakes like he doesn't remember when he pops up still being alive, to the shock of Sienna and company. But he's faking that. He remembers what happens, and he and Norma talk about it, because Norma was kind of in on the fact that Sienna was trying to kill him. And Norma wants Warren to kill her because Norma seems to want to control every villainous action happening on this show. And I've really started to realize why there's such a disconnect here for me, and probably for a lot of people who have watched Hollyoaks for a long while, is because they're trying to make Norma the new big bad, if you will, for any Buffy fans out there. But Warren and Sienna, especially Warren, are characters we've watched on this show for so long now, be this menacing characters, be these top-notch villains, be scary villains at time, that they are still scarier than Norma, because Norma's been here for about a minute. So it's just not clicking, it's just not working. Norma is not this big, bad, scary villain, because Warren and Sienna, to us as viewers, are scarier than she is. So that is, to me, a big part of why this particular story isn't really clicking or working for me. I don't hate it. It's not the worst on the show. There's actually far worse stories than this one. This one can at least be entertaining at times because of the characters involved, but it's still not really working. Now, in the old Nadira Shaq story, we've seen for months now Nadira and Juliet having their little affair, but Nadira not wanting to admit it because she doesn't know how her family is going to react. And as it gets closer and closer to the wedding, it seems like the writers out of nowhere wanted to make sure that Shaq is actually also a bad guy in this story, and that Nadira is not just a total bad person for making or continuing to go to Juliet for an affair. So they have Shaq admit that he's still in love with Verity, someone who he left high and dry and back months ago, and they kind of are bringing them back together, but she's moving on with her own life. It was another case of weak writing here because of it just coming out of the blue that Shaq still loves Verity, so they can kind of lessen the blow if it's just not Nadira who doesn't want to go on with this marriage. and make her look like the bad guy. They both end up calling off the wedding during the wedding, and then Zayn and Mizpah end up getting married instead. But I'm glad we're moving on from this story, and we'll see where it goes. I have no faith in Lucy Allan to bring it anywhere interesting, but we'll see. The other story has been DeMarcus on the run, and Grace ending up finding him, and they think he killed Saul. They're trying to make this story, I talked about it last week, kind of being like, how black people have to deal with the police and him going down for a crime he didn't commit. And that side of the story is working. But what isn't working still is the character of Joseph and his relationship with Vicky, and Joseph being able to get away with everything. They've written Joseph, who's supposed to basically be a teenager, to outsmart. I hate when they write characters to outsmart the adults in the situation, and Joseph has become that character on this show. He's a very one-note villain to boot, too, who's just evil all the time. It's not working. I'm glad Scott and Maxine kind of are figuring things out, and that he may have been the one involved in Saul's murder, but I kind of hope the story moves along a little quicker because it's not working for me. We got a little bit of Imran's eating disorder. One of the many stories going on now. Imran's a character I've always enjoyed on the show, but he hasn't gotten a lot of airtime the past few months. But at least he's still involved in a story, I guess. But I'm gonna need them to move that along quicker too. We got more of the incel story with Eric, who's been obsessed with Cindy, and Tony kind of walking in on him, making art of Cindy. It's another slower moving story that I will hope to see move along faster. Even though some of these stories aren't moving along at as quick as I would like them to move, I still think that a lot of these stories are just more entertaining than the 4 soap operas below it. But as I've talked about a lot in this video, the writing remains weak on Hollyoaks, and there's going to come a time when Hollyoaks gets so bad and unwatchable for me that I probably drop it below the boring soaps as well. So Lucy Allan's Hollyoaks still isn't working for me, but for August, because a lot of soaps are more boring and because Neighbours is no longer on the air, it did go up a spot to number 6.